The next question says, the lack of competition within a monopoly means that, number one, offered goods and services are lackluster. Um, let's just take a look at the rest of the answer choices. Number two, monopolists set their own prices. Number three, the products market is small. And number four, consumers must look elsewhere to find options. So let's take a look at each of these and see if we can eliminate these. So offered goods and services are lackluster. That's not necessarily true. There's an argument that says that competition increases the quality of goods because people want to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And if you have a monopoly with no competitors, then maybe the quality of goods might go down, but this is not necessarily the case. There are probably many examples of monopoly having quality goods. And so we're not going to pick or number one as the answer choice for this one necessarily. Number two says monopolists set their own prices. And this is true because, in perfect competition, we assume that there's high competition, which means that all firms are price takers. In monopolies, we assume that because there's no competition, firms are actually price setters. They can vary their output to change the price that they want to set. And that's a tool that monopolists have that perfectly competitive firms don't. So that is definitely one of their advantages or one of their tools. The third is that the products market is small. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of examples of natural monopolies which are very large. We can think of like the electric grid market or cell phone service. Those product markets are huge, and yet they are also monopolies. And so that is not necessarily going to be the case that the products market is small. And finally, consumers must look elsewhere to find options. Again, lacking competition does not mean that you have to find other options. A lot of times, natural monopolies exist in places in which there are no other options, and we can think again about cell phone carriers where you might only have one or two providers in a certain area, or electric grid where you don't really get to say who services your electricity in your area. It's kind of preset and predetermined by natural monopolies, and so consumers can't look for other options in those circumstances. So we're going to say option two, monopolists set their own prices, is most likely going to be the right answer. And so let's take a look at the answer choices given by, or the rationale given by the previous tutor. Previous tutor says, yes, monopolists set their own prices. And they say a monopoly is a market type defined by the existence of a single producing agent. The sole producer and supplier controls the entire market supply and enjoys the fruit of its market control. It exercises immense bargaining power over its consumers as they do not have alternatives to switch to. A monopoly is characterized by the existence of absolute barriers to entry and exit and the inexistence of substitutes. It doesn't have to have absolute barriers to entry, just very high barriers to entry. But we'll let that slide. Hence, a monopolist is enabled to charge a price of its own. As the monopolist applies to the entire market, it faces the market demand curve as its individual demand curve. The monopolist sets its own price at a point on its demand curve, i.e., the average revenue corresponding to the intersection of the marginal revenue and the marginal cost curve, i.e., the profit maximizing point. So I think this gives a really good breakdown of what a monopoly is, and also what a specific monopoly graph looks like, which is good. So that freedom offered by the lack of competition allows monopolies to do all these things. So I think this is pretty good. I'll say not necessary to have absolute barriers, just very high barriers. Otherwise, good summary.